Rami Khouri is a distinguished public policy fellow at the American University of Beirut, and he joins us live from New York. Rami, how significant is this moment and what consequences do you see?
What's significant about this moment is that it is a continuing process that keeps expanding in scale. The number of boats, the number of people, the nature of the people involved, some politicians, some public elected officials in Europe, the support they're getting from their home territories in the United States. There's some members of Congress who've written to the State Department to insist that these people be protected. They're civilians, they're not a military threat. The global media coverage and the inability of the Israelis to stop these flotillas and these attempts to bring in aid to starving children, to stop them through intimidation and threats, and even in the past they've killed people on a Turkish boat some years ago. So this is significant. It's a step in a process that keeps growing and growing and growing, and the Israelis don't know what to do about it. Their traditional military strength is not something that can stop this because there is huge attention to it. The legal situation is very clear. International conventions, the San Remo Manual for to travel at sea, the Fourth Geneva Convention, International Criminal Court, the International Court of Justice. There's many, many legal provisions that explicitly say that you cannot starve a population under occupation. That's an act of war. You cannot, that's against international humanitarian law. And you have to make special provision for allowing the supplies of food and milk for children and infants and women, pregnant women and other women. These are explicitly spelled out in various international legal mechanisms. And the Israelis, of course, don't.
Sorry to interrupt. Just want to, get your sense of how this is being viewed from the US and how. We've spoken to our correspondent, but of course you're speaking to us from New York, and there are many Americans on board.
There are Americans, and there's American members of Congress who are speaking out, and people in the media. And there's, I just got a notice from some people here, actually I'm in Boston right now, and people in Boston are planning a big demonstration tomorrow in front of the Israeli consulate. So this has become part of the mechanism of peacefully challenging the Israeli genocide, which the United States has supported. And therefore, this has to be seen as part of an escalating, nonviolent political resistance campaign against the Israeli occupation, the siege, and the genocide that's going on. The thing that bothers most of us is that the Arab countries are doing very little, at least that can be seen, maybe behind the scenes, but the Arab countries could do more. Some European countries, Italy, Greece, Turkey, Spain, I think they've stepped in to help as much as they can to protect some of the ships when they're out in international waters. But this is an ongoing process, and I think you're going to see this continue to expand, and people will find ways to publicize the cruelty of the Israeli methods that are being used to starve the Palestinian population, and then to, of course, shoot them and kill them and bomb them. But the starvation method is particularly gruesome. And that's why it's explicitly mentioned in various international legal mechanisms that it's a crime of war. It's prohibited explicitly that there has to be special protection for women and children and infants especially. So we'll see how this develops now when the Israelis obviously have changed their approach. They're not attacking the boats like they did before. They realize that this only creates bad publicity for them.
And that's an important point because we spoke earlier to one of the organizers on board as Israel was on board some of the other ships on the flotilla, and he said that water cannon was being used. Is there a chance that this could escalate? I mean, we're looking at images right now of the people there on the flotilla with their hands up. They've been trained. They're prepared for an Israeli, the Israeli Navy to board their ships. But so far, from my understanding, it is water cannon. That is what we're looking at, presumably on our screens right now. Water cannon being sent forcefully there onto the ships. But could this escalate, Rami? That's my point. So far, like you said, they have changed tact. They know that the world is watching this.
I don't think it's going to escalate into more direct Israeli military attacks, shooting people. They'll arrest people, they'll detain people, they'll come up with all kinds of stories, most of which will be untrue, about how these people have links with terrorist groups and with Hamas and with undesirable groups. Most of this is untrue. All of it, I think, is untrue. But when looking at these pictures of the water cannons, this reminds me of the American Civil Rights Movement in the 1960s and 70s in Birmingham, Alabama, and across the South in the United States, when young children were peacefully marching. 14-year-old girls were marching peacefully for their civil rights, black girls, and the police would attack them with police dogs, and then they realized that wasn't getting them very good publicity, and they started using water cannon as well. So these are old techniques that autocratic, militant regimes use when they have to deal with an occupied and subjugated population that they control, and when the population just won't roll over and die and leave. The resistance is particularly impressive here because most of the people on these boats are not Palestinians. Some of them are, and some of them trace their ancestry to Gaza and to Palestine. But most of the people on these boats are from countries around the world. And this is what's so dramatic today. The really new element in the Israeli-Palestinian battle, in the struggle of the last century between Arabism and Zionism, is the tremendous global support among people, even in the United States and in Europe, to support the Palestinian quest for justice and for Israel and Palestine to peacefully coexist with equal rights. This is unprecedented, and it's gaining power almost daily. It's really quite impressive to see this, to the point where the United States president had to come out with his 20-point plan. He calls it a peace plan. It's not really a peace plan. It's a colonial subjugation plan, but still he felt the need to do this. He felt the need to stop this Israeli genocidal assault. And this is because of the tremendous international pressure that was building up against Israel, but also against Western countries who support the genocide, because they legally can be held complicit for assisting the genocide. The laws of genocide are very specific, and the laws of protecting civilian aid shipments, humanitarian aid shipments at sea are very, very specific. And Israel is breaking every one of these laws and doesn't particularly care. But the message coming back at them from the people on the flotilla and the many around the world supporting them is that the world cares. If the Israelis and the Americans don't care about the rule of law and are willing to shred the last 75 years of humanitarian law and other human rights laws and things like that, the rest of the world does care. They want these laws to be implemented. They want civilians to be protected. They want babies to be fed and not to die of starvation. So this is a step in this long process that is going to go on probably for some months and years. And military action is not going to resolve this. We know that now. 2 years the Israelis have had, and they haven't been able to achieve any of their major goals. And now we're seeing the resistance, peaceful resistance globally increasing. And I would think the next step has to be the Arab leaderships to be shamed into taking more practical measures. They're not going to attack Israel. But those who have ambassadors could call them back. Those who have trade relations with Israel might suspend them if they can afford to do so. Maybe some of them can't, which is another sign
Rami,
of the weakness of Arab regimes. Yes.
Well, I have to leave it there, but really important that point that you make, that the really new element here is that global support for Palestinians and that peaceful resistance, which is unprecedented. Thank you so much, Rami Khouri.